eat more protein and reduce your calorie intake. That's the usual advice given to older athletes. For me, there's much more to it than that, and I'm going to explain why in this video. I'll talk about what I eat, and in particular, when I eat it. And the three aspects to this: time-restricted eating, that is, eating all your food within a set number of hours, in my case 10 hours. Blood glucose control, and why that is particularly important for the older athlete. And first, the type of food I do my best to avoid. Supermarkets are stuffed with ultra-processed food. I check the labels, and if it contains anything I don't have in a home kitchen, then I try to resist buying it. Yogurt is a great example. The unflavoured ones appear to contain only milk, although this isn't an ingredients list, it's allergy advice. The flavoured version has to show ingredients, and there is a whole cocktail I wouldn't eat. By contrast, fermented food like kefir or sauerkraut or kimchi is superb because of its live bacteria, brilliant for a microbiome. Low or full fat is more tricky. It's not clear whether the low fat contains emulsifiers to make it creamy. Full fat typically transports more vitamins, so I go with it and limit how much I eat. Because you'll find emulsifiers and thickeners everywhere when you start looking closely. My rule is to avoid ultra-processed food as much as possible, except when on a big ride, because then it's convenient. But day to day, UPF is out. Glucose control follows on from food choice. Our bodies are designed to store this simple carbohydrate. If it drops to 40%, we will die within 3 minutes. But we are less evolved to shed glucose, and too much of it causes inflammation and a whole host of unhealthy changes to our bodies. It's normal to see a blood glucose rise after eating. Your body then works to bring it back to base level. It should happen smoothly. If you have a large spike, it takes longer to return to normal. And a big spike can be followed by a dip, which you do not want. This triggers sweating, hunger, irritability, and fatigue. It's bad for your long-term health. It's bad for your weight control. It's bad for your sleep, a whole host of rotten stuff. If your life is a series of spikes and dips, then this long-term inflammation can undercut all your training. It's bad when you're in your 40s. It's worse as you age. The telltale sign is needing a caffeine or sugar boost around 11 a.m. or 3 p.m. The chances are that indicates you're on something of a glucose roller coaster. Now, exercise does mitigate a lot of that. It just gives the glucose somewhere to go, into your muscles to use. But for me, flattening any kind of glucose curve is pretty much the foundation on which everything else is built. Previously, I have fitted myself with a continuous glucose monitor, as used by diabetics to control their serious condition. For me, it was just part of the Zoe healthy eating program. I could monitor my glucose response to different foods and work out what's best for me. It'll be no surprise that a sugary breakfast cereal causes a massive unhealthy spike, but so did so-called healthy alternatives. This expensive one from Marks & Spencer produces the smallest glucose rise for me. And their sourdough bread produces an even smaller rise than our local baker's sourdough. That was a surprise. As was porridge. Incidentally, I always go organic because oats have been shown to trap a lot of pesticides. Turns out porridge makes my glucose rise quickly, but not if I eat a handful of almonds first. The fibre and protein slow glucose absorption. And secondly, I'll eat it before I go out on a long ride or run, and then the energy in this has somewhere to go. It goes into the exercise. This principle applies to lunch and dinner too. Movement after every meal is important to control glucose. I do not follow time-restricted eating every day, but on 3 or 4 each week, I aim to eat within a 10-hour window. It's a way of limiting your calorific intake with an additional benefit. When you stop eating, your body goes into a different state. You can look up the science around autophagy, but I've heard it described as the cleanup crew comes in. They start repairing all sorts of things, from your microbiome to your cells, all the accumulated damage. And at our age, the cleanup crew needs all the time they can get, because we have accumulated quite a lot of damage in our years. Typically, a couple of early morning, low-intensity turbo sessions are done fasted. I'll eat first if I'm planning something more intense. I'll explain more in the next video. The main benefit is having less time to eat, so in theory I eat less provided I don't binge, but I have to make sure I get enough protein. This is what I've found. Firstly, most days I'm more than happy to just have a black coffee before 10:30. I don't feel ravenous. If I am hungry, or if I'm doing a longer ride or run, I'll just eat that day. You know, life's for living. Secondly, limited time means I can only put down so much food. Breakfast 10:30, lunch around 2:30, dinner at 6:30, done by 8:30. That timetable works for me. But I stress this applies to normal days around the house, writing or editing. It does not apply to long days on the bike. Then sugar is my friend. I'll eat anything and everything I can get my hands on. In the next video, my menu plan for a typical day. Breakfast, lunch, and a whole collection of recipes for dinner. After that, it's strength training. I'll describe what I do and why I need to improve my form. Then it's a mix of training for aerobic efficiency and capacity, mostly on the bike. Please subscribe not to miss any of that, and also the adventure cycling videos that I hope to find time to make too. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.